Growing up, it was always Alex this, Alex that. You know the drill, the perfect son, the chosen one, and then there was me, Julie. Just Julie, nothing fancy about that. My parents, well, they weren't shy about the pecking order in our house. I remember once, I was about 10 or so, sitting at the dinner table listening to Dad go on about Alex's latest school project. That boy, he's going places, Dad would say, nodding like a bobblehead, his fork paused in midair. Alex, sitting across from me, would smirk, his chest puffed out like he'd already conquered the world. Can I be excused? I'd ask, hardly touching my food. Mom would glance up, barely pulling her eyes away from Alex. Why? You hardly ate anything. You should eat more if you want to grow strong. Maybe then you'd do something worth talking about too. It stung, you know. I'd nod, mumble something, and clear the table while they continued to praise Alex's latest escapade. School wasn't much different for me. Teachers knew me as Alex's sister, which pretty much summed up my existence. It didn't matter much what I did, all roads led back to Alex. One evening, I was clearing up Alex's mess in his room while he lounged on his bed, a sports magazine in hand. Julie, make sure you get those corners clean, eh? Mom hates it when you slack off, he said, not even looking at me. I snapped back then, couldn't help it. Why don't you clean up your own mess for once? He chuckled, that annoying, condescending laugh. Come on, sis, we both know you need the practice more than I do. Besides, you're good at it. It's kinda your thing. Days turned into years, and that pattern stuck. Alex did the shining, I did the cleaning. When high school graduation rolled around, everyone was buzzing about Alex, going off to some fancy college. That night, the air at home was thick with excitement and pride. I was setting the table for his celebratory dinner, overhearing bits and pieces of their plans for his future. Mom was fluttering around the kitchen, Dad was popping open a bottle of something expensive. Alex will need a new laptop and some decent clothes, we want him looking his best, Mom was saying. And Julie? Dad asked, though it sounded more like an afterthought. She shrugged. Oh, she can start looking for a job. Something will turn up. She's a smart girl. Smart, but apparently not smart enough for college, or for any of that hope and pride they ladled out so generously for Alex. It always went the same way at family gatherings. Mom and Dad couldn't stop bragging about Alex, how he was acing his courses at college, all the important friends he was making. The living room filled with their friends nodding, smiling, clapping him on the back. He's really going places, Dad would say, beaming. Then, one morning, everything changed. I was folding laundry when the phone rang. Mom answered, and within seconds, her face drained of color. She staggered, clutching the counter for support. What? That can't be. She gasped into the phone. My heart raced as I watched her crumble. What happened, Mom? I rushed to her side, dropping a pair of socks. She covered the mouthpiece, her voice trembling. It's Alex. He's been arrested for fraud. I helped her to a chair as she hung up and called for an ambulance. She was too shaky, too pale. While we waited for the paramedics, she told me everything in hushed, broken sentences. Alex had been using his charm on rich women, ones often older than him, worming his way into their trust. Then he'd drain their bank accounts, swipe their jewelry. It was like hearing about a stranger, not my brother. The ambulance came and took Mom to the hospital. Dad followed the ambulance, his face set in a hard line, and I was left alone, trying to digest the chaos. Aunt Linda, Mom's sister, showed up later, her lips pressed into a thin line. I always said that boy was too spoiled, she declared as she walked in, her voice rough with disapproval. It was tough, hearing it so blunt, but she wasn't wrong. When Mom came home, she was quieter, softer. Julie, she started one evening, weeks later, her voice shaky. I'm so sorry. We put him on a pedestal, and now look where it got him. And you deserved more from us. I nodded, not trusting my voice. It was one thing to be overlooked, another to hear them admit it. "We've set aside money for your college," Dad chimed in, awkwardly joining the conversation. "Whatever you want to study, it's your choice. It's not too late." I was stunned. College? For me? It felt like a door flung wide open, a chance at something big, something mine. Life at home shifted after that. There was less talk of Alex, and more about what classes I might take, what careers I could consider. Aunt Linda would drop by, her approval a rare but welcome warmth as she saw us trying to mend the fractures in our small family. College. I never thought I'd get here, but here I was, lugging my bags up to the 3rd floor of the dorm, heart pounding with excitement and, yeah, a fair bit of nerves. My roommate, Cassie, was a whirlwind of energy with bright red hair and a laugh that filled the room. "You must be Julie," she greeted, helping me with a box. "Welcome to your new home." Settling in was a blur of color and chaos. Cassie was all about style and flair, and before I knew it, she had me sitting in front of a mirror, makeup kit splayed out like a treasure chest. "Girl, we gotta give you a glow up," she declared. I was hesitant, watching her expert hands. "Just go easy, okay? I don't really wear much makeup." She winked. "Trust me, you'll love it." And, you know what? She was right. When she was done, I barely recognized the girl in the mirror. "Wow, is that really me?" "See? You're a knockout," Cassie said, and something warm kindled inside me. College wasn't just about the makeup, though. It was about discovering a part of me that had been shoved into corners and silenced at home. I joined clubs, spoke up in classes, and even led some campus events. It was like I was making up for lost time, the years I spent hidden behind Alex's shadow. One day, I decided to surprise my parents with a visit. Walking into the house, I was met with open mouths and wide eyes. Mom's hand flew to her mouth. "Julie, is that you?" I twirled, feeling the fabric of my new skirt flare out. "Yeah, it's me." Mom teared up, stepping forward to hug me. "You look beautiful, so beautiful," she said, her voice thick. Dad looked over, his usual stoic self struggling with a smile. "You sure do, kiddo." Back at college, I kept pushing. Studies, especially in finance, were tough, but fascinating. I absorbed every bit of knowledge like a sponge, determined to make something of myself. Cassie and I would sit up late, sprawled among textbooks and notes, quizzing each other. Graduation day came faster than I thought it would. As I walked across the stage to collect my diploma, cheers rang out. Financial manager. I had done it, not just for me, but for the girl who thought she'd never be more than a shadow. After college, I landed a job at a private company. It was all numbers and big clients, and I thrived in the busy buzz of it all. I rented an apartment in the city, small but mine, decorating it with bits and pieces of my new life. Every paycheck, I tucked away a little, dreaming of a place of my own. My evenings were quiet, a stark contrast to the loud, lively days at the office. Sometimes, I'd sit by my window, looking out at the bustling street below, a cup of tea in hand, and think about how far I'd come. I was at work, buried in spreadsheets and client emails, when my phone rang. Glancing at the screen, I saw it was Mom. Her calls were usually reserved for evenings, so a lump formed in my throat as I picked up. "Julie," she said, her voice quivering so much I barely recognized it. "It's your dad. He had a massive heart attack. He's gone, Julie." My world stopped. The phone nearly slipped from my hand. "Gone? Just like that?" My voice was a whisper, disbelief painting every word. "Yes, baby, just like that," she sobbed. I told my boss I had to leave and rushed home. When I got there, Mom was a wreck, her eyes red and swollen from crying. I hugged her, feeling her body shaking with sobs. "I'm here, Mom. We'll get through this together." We started organizing the funeral in a daze. Amidst choosing flower arrangements and casket styles, Mom said she'd call Alex to tell him about Dad. I didn't think it was a good idea, but she insisted, saying it was the right thing to do. I was folding Dad's suits when she made the call. I could only hear her sigh, but her face said enough. "Alex, it's about your father. He passed away from a heart attack." She paused, listening. Her face fell further, something I didn't think was possible. She hung up and turned to me, tears streaming down. "He said he's too busy, Julie. Called it nonsense and asked if he was in the will. When I told him everything's in my name, he just hung up." Mom's voice broke, and she slumped into a chair. I sat next to her, wrapping my arm around her shoulders. "It's okay, Mom. We don't need him. We'll manage." But inside, my heart hardened a little more against my brother. The day of the funeral was gray, the sky crying the tears we held back. Family and friends came, their faces somber, hugging us, whispering condolences. Everyone noticed Alex's absence. The whispers grew louder, tinged with disdain. Aunt Linda was fierce in her support. She pulled Mom into a tight embrace. "He doesn't deserve your tears, Sarah. Not a single one," she hissed, glaring in the direction of the empty seat that should have been Alex's. Mom just nodded, her grief deepened by her son's betrayal. I stood there, feeling hollow. How could he do this to us? To Dad? After everyone else had left, Aunt Linda stayed, helping us clean up. "You two are strong," she said, packing up a tray of untouched sandwiches. "Don't let him drag you down, hear me?" I nodded, swallowing hard. "I won't, Aunt Linda. I promise." We spent the next few days in a quiet bubble, sorting through Dad's things, sharing memories. It was painful, but healing in a way, knowing we were doing it together, without Alex. Mom sometimes stared off, lost in thought. "I just don't understand where we went wrong with him," she'd say. I didn't have an answer that would soothe her pain. Instead, I'd squeeze her hand, offering silent support. We were moving forward, slowly, a little broken, but together. And in that togetherness, there was a strange kind of strength. It had been a few weeks since Dad's funeral, and the quietness of Mom's house felt heavier each time I visited. I'd drop by after work, sometimes bringing dinner, trying to fill the spaces left by grief with something warm, something normal. But Mom had been acting off, dodgy almost. Like when her phone rang, she'd jump up and hurry to another room, her voice a hushed whisper, through the closed door. One evening, I couldn't ignore it any longer. We were sitting in the living room, half watching some TV show neither of us cared about, when her phone buzzed. Her eyes darted to it, then to me, and she stood up, phone in hand. "Mom," I said, my voice firm. "What's going on? Every time your phone rings, you act like you're guarding state secrets." She hesitated, then sighed, the phone still in her hand. "It's your brother," she admitted, not meeting my eyes. I felt a stir of irritation. "Alex? What does he want now?" "He's been having financial troubles. He asks for help. I've been sending him money," she said quietly, as if confessing a sin. I stood up, frustration boiling over. "Money? Mom, he didn't even show up for Dad's funeral. How can you just give him money after everything?" She wrung her hands, a sign of her distress. "He's still my son, Julie. He tells me he loves me, that he's sorry, but he's just in a bad place right now." "That's no excuse," I snapped. "He's using you. You need that money, especially now." She looked down, defeated. I hated the harshness in my voice, but this was too much. "Next time he calls, tell him you can't help," I suggested, my tone softening. "See what he says then." She nodded, more from exhaustion than agreement. We didn't have to wait long. The next evening, his call came, just as we were clearing the dinner table. Mom answered, her voice shaky. "Alex, I can't send you money anymore." There's nothing left." His voice was loud enough that I could hear it, harsh and demanding. "What do you mean no money? You always have money. Don't lie to me, you old fool." "That's enough." I couldn't hold back. I grabbed the phone from her, my own anger flaring. Alex, you listen to me. Don't you dare speak to her like that. She's done more than enough for you. We're done here. I ended the call, my heart pounding in my chest. Over the next few days, I saw a change in Mom. She was a bit more decisive, a little less prone to those moments of distant sadness. We didn't talk much about Alex after that. It was as if we'd reached an unspoken agreement to focus on the here and now. The phone call came on a quiet Sunday morning. Aunt Linda's voice was a sharp jolt out of the blue, shattering the calm. "Julie, it's Mom. She passed away last night." My hand clenched the phone so tightly it hurt. "What? But how?" "She went to bed and just didn't wake up. The doctor said it was a heart attack," Aunt Linda explained, her voice thick with grief. The news hit like a sledgehammer. Not even 6 months since Dad had died, and now Mom too? It felt unreal, a cruel joke fate was playing on me. Aunt Linda and I organized the funeral together, just like we had done for Dad. The weight of planning another funeral so soon was crushing, but Aunt Linda was a rock through it all. "He didn't show," Aunt Linda said bitterly on the day of the funeral, confirming my fear that Alex would ignore our mother's death as he had our father's. Her tone was furious, a stark contrast to the somber atmosphere around us. The sting of grief was still fresh when the black luxury car pulled into the driveway of my parents' house, its engine purring like a cat that got the cream. I watched from the window as Alex stepped out, his arm around a woman whose sharp heels clicked authoritatively against the concrete. Her makeup was bold, almost defiant, contrasting sharply with her mature features. Alex looked different, his face was still handsome but worn, with lines of strain that hadn't been there before, and a hardness in his eyes that was new. He pushed past me as he entered the house, his companion trailing behind him with a smirk. "This is Cheryl, my wife," Alex announced, his voice carrying a brash certainty. "We're moving in." I was stunned, my heart pounding in my chest. "What are you talking about, Alex? This is still Mom and Dad's house." Cheryl laughed, a sound that grated on my nerves. "This is our house now. Get your stuff and get out." I felt a surge of anger. "Leave? I'm not going anywhere. This is my home too." Alex stepped closer, his expression darkening. "Listen, Julie, I'm not asking. You have 3 days to clear out, or you'll regret it." The threat hung in the air, thick and heavy. As they left, Cheryl's laughter echoed in the hallway, a mocking reminder of the confrontation. Shaking, I called Aunt Linda, needing to hear a voice of reason. She answered on the second ring. "Aunt Linda," I said, my voice a mix of anger and desperation. "Alex just showed up with his wife. They're trying to kick me out of the house." There was a pause, then a soft chuckle. "Oh, is that so?" she said, her tone light but carrying an edge of steel. "Don't you worry, Julie. You are not going anywhere. I'll come over in 3 days when they return. We'll sort this out together." The next 3 days were a blur of anxiety and restless nights. I tried to go about my daily routine, but my thoughts were always on the looming confrontation. Aunt Linda called each day, her calls a lifeline that kept me grounded. Aunt Linda and I were sitting in the living room, sipping tea and bracing ourselves for what was coming. Just as we set our cups down, we heard the rumble of a truck pulling up outside. "Showtime," Aunt Linda murmured, standing up. I followed her lead, my hands cold and clammy. The knock was loud, almost aggressive. I took a deep breath and opened the door. Alex and Cheryl stood there, his face hard, hers smug. "Time's up, Julie. We told you to leave. Now get out," Alex demanded, stepping forward. I didn't move. Aunt Linda came to my side, her posture stiffening. "Alex, you need to listen and understand that you are making a big mistake," she said sharply. Alex sneered. "What are you going to do about it, Aunt Linda? This is my house now." Without a word, Aunt Linda pulled an envelope from her purse and waved it in front of him. "This is your mother's will, Alex." She appointed me as the executor. In a swift move, Alex snatched the envelope, tore it open, and ripped up the papers inside. Cheryl clapped her hands, laughing. Well, that settles it then. The house is ours. Aunt Linda only laughed, the sound deep and rich. Oh, Alex, that was just a copy. The original is safe with the notary. You should have waited before showing your hand. She reached into her purse again and pulled out another document, holding it up. According to this will, which is legal and binding, the entire estate, including this house and the money, is left to Julie. And you, Alex, you get the family Bible, to help you reflect on your sins and maybe find a better path. Alex's face turned red, his anger palpable. You can't do this. That money is mine too. Julie, you need to give me my share. Why? I finally spoke up, my voice steady. Because you demand it? Because you've shown up here after years of ignoring this family unless you needed something? His fists clenched, and for a moment, I thought he might do something drastic. But then Aunt Linda interjected, if you don't leave now, Alex, I will call the police. Cheryl tugged at his arm. Let's go, Alex. This isn't over. As they stormed off, Cheryl shooting daggers back with her eyes, Aunt Linda placed the will back into her purse. Well done, Julie. Standing up to him like that. The door closed behind them with a thud that echoed through the now silent house. I slumped against it, relief washing over me in an overwhelming wave. Thank you, Aunt Linda. I don't know what I would have done without you. She smiled, wrapping an arm around my shoulders. You're stronger than you know, Julie. This is your home. You've earned the right to be here, not just by blood, but by being the one who cared. I knew the fight might not be over, but with Aunt Linda's help and the legal backing of the will, I felt ready to face whatever came next. This was my home, my sanctuary, and I was going to defend it, not just for me but for the memory of my parents who had loved this place and wanted it to be a place of peace. The saga with Alex didn't end with him storming off that day. A few weeks later, I got a call from his lawyer saying Alex was challenging Mom's will. My stomach sank, but I was ready to defend my rights. I hired a lawyer, Mr. Thompson, a no-nonsense man with a reputation for being a bulldog in court. We'll need to prove your continuous support and involvement with your parents, Mr. Thompson explained as we prepared for the case. And the fact that Alex was absent will play to our advantage. I nodded, gathering old emails, photos, anything that showed my connection to my parents. Aunt Linda and a couple of other relatives agreed to testify. They were tired of Alex's selfishness too. The day of the hearing, I walked into the courtroom feeling a mix of nerves and resolve. Aunt Linda squeezed my hand before taking her seat. Alex and Cheryl were already there, whispering with their lawyer. Alex looked over, his gaze trying to intimidate me. I focused on the judge, trying to keep my composure. Mr. Thompson was methodical in presenting the evidence. Julie has been the primary caregiver and the constant in her parents' lives, especially in their final years, he stated, displaying emails I'd sent to Mom, discussing doctor's appointments and home repairs. Then it was Aunt Linda's turn to testify. She stood, her voice clear and unwavering. Alex? He hardly ever called, never visited. Julie was the one who cared for them. Her words were like arrows, hitting their mark. Alex's lawyer tried to object, but the evidence was too strong. And let's not forget, Aunt Linda continued, pointing directly at Alex. He didn't even show up for their funerals. What kind of son does that? When it was time for closing arguments, Mr. Thompson was confident. The evidence is clear. Julie's dedication to her parents is well documented. Alex's claims are baseless, driven by greed. The judge nodded, taking in everything before making her decision. The will stands as it is. The plaintiff's motion to contest it is denied. Alex slammed his hands on the table, his face red with anger. Cheryl pulled him away, and they hurried out of the courtroom, defeated. Life settled after that. I met someone, Jack, a kind and gentle man who shared my dreams of a simple, happy life. We talked about having kids, about raising them with love and fairness, not favoritism. I want them to know they're loved equally. I told Jack one evening as we sat watching the sunset from the back porch. He smiled, squeezing my hand. They will be. We'll make sure of it. Alex never came back into my life after that day in court. Sometimes I wondered where he was, if he ever found peace or if his greed continued to lead him down lonely paths. But those were his choices to make, not mine.